Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Tim McCarthy, host of 20 Tim Minutes, a podcast that focuses on mental health through humor, insight, and personal stories. Catch my 20-minute episodes every Tuesday, and on Thursdays, listen to me interview a wide variety of guests where we show our support as well as sharing our own personal struggles and stories with mental health. Let's break the stigma by cracking a smile. 20 Tim Minutes can be found on Digitent Podcast, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Have a good one.
What's up, weirdos?
Hey, yo.
Me? Shit. I got me a little something rolled. The lights are low, and we're about to chop it up with Abigail on the Manic, Pixie, Weirdo podcast.
Okay.
A safe space for weirdos of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds to relax and speak their piece.
Speak that piece.
So grab your glass of wine and grass the chief as I get off the mic so the main weirdo can speak. Peace.
Peace, God.
What is up, weirdos? You're listening to the Manic, Pixie, Weirdo. I'm Abigail, your host, and this is the podcast where we talk about all the different kinds of relationships that we can have in our lives. But first, a word from our sponsor. What is up, you guys? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our sponsor for this episode, Newsly. It's an audio app for iOS and Android where they basically take articles from all over the world and all the trending topics that are on the web at any given moment, and it reads them to you in like a natural voice, like a human being would. It's basically the first time in the history of the internet where the entire web becomes listenable. It's really cool, you guys. They have all different kinds of articles from all different kinds of topics so that you can like stop scrolling and start listening, which I really love. You can follow all the, any topic, all the topics, whatever topic you want to talk about or listen about, from sports, science, Bitcoin, even the Kardashians, like everybody. They have all the latest articles and it reads them to you. So it's super easy. They also have podcasts, which is why I'm talking to you guys about it, because our podcast, along with podcasts from over 50 other countries, are on the app. So that's really, really cool. You can start listening there as well. You can download and use Newsly for free right now at www.newsly.me, or you can use this link in the description. And when you use the promo code P1X1EP0DCAST, that will give you a free month of premium subscription to Newsly. So go check it out, you guys. And thank you so much to Newsly for sponsoring this episode. And we're back. And this week we are joined with AkaCLouisewilliams. Say hi.
Hey there, everybody. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to talk to you. And we are talking about our relationship with mental health institutions and sort of all of the different things that go into that. But first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and where everybody can find you?
Absolutely. So in a nutshell, I am a trained qualitative researcher. I got my master's degree in public policy at the University of California, Irvine. And I am a freelance writer, a poet, and an artist. And you can find my work. I have a link tree. It's Linktree at AkaCLouise. I'm also on Amazon under CLouisewilliams, and I have a WordPress, AkaCLouise.wordpress.com.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really excited to talk to you.
No problem.
So everybody go check her stuff out first. But second, let's just kind of get right into the topic. So what are mental health institutions and what is their purpose?
Right. So in essence, mental health institutions, you kind of understand what their purpose is in theory, by their name. They are made to basically take in people who have severe mental illness, and to distribute resources to those people, whether that be individual or group therapy, psychiatric medication. In the state of California, at least, you have the 72-hour hold period where someone can be involuntarily institutionalized for 72 hours again, in order to be observed and in order to, adjust their medication and offer advice about the next steps they might take. So in essence, mental health care is the psychiatric or behavioral wing of our medical establishment, I guess.
Right. Now I'm in Texas, And
Mm-hmm.
we also have a similar rule of a 72-hour mandatory hold. It can be voluntary or involuntary, depending
Mm-hmm.
upon the circumstances of the situation. So one of the things that I really find interesting and I really like about you is I actually found you on TikTok, and you were very open about like this issue. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
it would necessarily be considered an issue, but it is definitely something that needs to be addressed, I would say. Could
Mm-hmm.
you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think just briefly, just to talk about my own experience with mental health institutions, I've always kind of struggled with mental health. I personally attribute that to the lack of recess going forward after junior high. That's really when my experience with depression a little kind of started. But
Mm.
it wasn't until my experience in grad school that I actually had my first, what I would call, psychotic break, to be honest, and ended up in a mental health institution the first time. Um, After seeing, the setup, how they treat people, um, even in the best of circumstances in mental health institutions, I kind of made my mission to become a mental health advocate, not only for myself, but for all of the people who really feel like they don't have a voice that have also been in mental health institutions. Um, so for me, that means speaking on my experience because I feel, personally empowered to do so. And in doing so, I see a lot of other people more willing to talk about their own experience as well. I personally believe that, it puts you in an extremely vulnerable position in the society because not many people actually do the work of understanding your personal diagnosis. In my experience, people who don't know really what mental health and mental illness looks like kind of assume that you're just hallucinating, assume that you're not in your right mind, which means your opinions, your perceptions of how people treat you are inherently flawed. And so people don't really listen to you and they completely disregard your rights as a patient and as a human being a lot of the time.
Y-
Um, and
Yeah.
so for me, speaking out on my own experience is really like the first way for me to combat that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's we are very open and honest about that here on the Manic Pixie Weirdo. You guys know I've been to rehab, I've been to mental health institutions, I've been to all, I'm a ridiculous person. I've been to all the places, done all the things. Um, and I specifically in a mental health hospital, not like a rehab facility, but like a mental health hospital. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever had a positive experience in a mental health
Right.
hospital, which is unfortunate because, mental health hospitals are not necessarily just for people who are having a more difficult time with things like schizophrenia or, some one of those types of disorders. But
Mhm.
like when I was the first time I was hospitalized in a mental health institution was because I have severe anxiety and I was having
Mhm.
panic attacks really badly. Um, and it's very difficult and can be very frustrating, especially from a patient's perspective, when you don't feel like you're being listened to. But yeah, not being able to feel like I'm being listened to. It's one of the most frustrating experiences that I've ever had in my life. Because not only is it frustrating, but it also can sort of compound the effects of whatever you're struggling with. I don't know if you had a similar experience.
Oh, absolutely. And so personally for me, I have been in mental institutions 8 or 9 times. And from the perspective of people who have not been in mental institutions, that sounds like a lot. But research shows that the same issue, like as far as recidivism in prisons, occurs in mental health institutions, where typically if you're going into mental health institution one time, you're going to go in at least a few more times because that's just how the system functions. Um, and typically speaking, once you're in a mental institution one time, it seems to me like I don't have any facts to like back this up like objectively, but in my personal experience and from what others have told me about their experiences, it's like you're kind of flagged like, oh, you've been in a mental institution once. They pull up your record, and automatically they're the psychiatrist or whoever you're talking to is automatically like, okay, maybe they just need to go back. Maybe that's the problem. And if people aren't listening to you, or if, your parent is in any way, shape, or form present, it's very likely that they're going to infantilize you, which is what has happened to me several times. Um, so the last time that I was in a mental hospital was actually very recently. So I, was planning this Rise Together political conference online with a bunch of my volunteers. And one of the volunteers who was no longer a part of the server, obviously, threatened my life. And, I have PTSD. So being put in a fight or flight response
Oh
was
my
an
gosh.
issue for
Yeah.
on multiple levels. So I ended up choosing to go to a mental hospital, to the ER, and checking myself in voluntarily, to be placed on a hold voluntarily.
Mhm.
But when I got in there and I told them up front what had happened, why I was agitated, I was trying to be very logical. And, from the get go, one of the nurses, I don't know if she was having a bad day, was immediately, very aggressive towards me.
Mhm.
And, the room that they put you in, you're there for several hours. They don't give you anything to do. They took my glasses for reasons I still don't understand. And I'm nearsighted, so I couldn't see anything. I had no one to talk to. And they didn't record the reason why I had put myself in there after the fact. On my paperwork, all it says is she's talking to herself as a result of internal stimuli, for whatever that means. They didn't record any of the reason why I had stated why I was there.
Oh,
Um,
oh my gosh.
and that just, that just kind of reinforces, like, you know, if you're going into a mental health institution for your safety or for the safety of others or because you're gravely disabled, which are the three reasons that they're going to put um, on your paperwork in the state of California for why they're holding you. Um, and they, the staff themselves are acting belligerently towards you or dismissive of your concerns, that itself can be a trigger. And I have been in mental hospitals where I wasn't having an episode until after I had to deal with the staff.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the average experience that I've had.
Yeah, I mean, the average, that's, and it's not unique to you, my friend. It is, I have had a similar
Mhm.
experience. I recently, we've talked about this before, guys. I recently, as recent as 2019, tried to commit suicide. And
Mhm.
I was actually taken to jail instead of being put into some sort of mental facility. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that I
Mhm.
was, before that, I had similar circumstances, and instead of taking me to jail, they took me to a mental health institution where they, again, involuntarily, that just means against your wishes, uh,
Mhm.
admits you into a psychiatric facility. And it got to the point where it felt like the longer I was there, the less like the more crazy I was beginning to feel and the less sane.
Mhm.
And that's never a good feeling. Um, and I don't know what that's about. I don't know if the solution to that is, to simply hire better staff or to
Mhm.
do some sort of rotation with staff. Like you can only be in this field for so long because we know that it will take a toll on you
Mm.
mentally. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what the solution to that is, but there needs to be one because if your staff is triggering your patients, then nobody's getting the help that they need.
Right. So I can actually speak on that a little bit. Because my thoughts on this are kind of twofold, I guess. So the first has to do with the actual construction of the space. So, I understand you're in Texas, so maybe they construct the mental health institutions differently than where I'm at in Southern California. I've been in a few different ones, and by and large, the predominant feeling that I get from these spaces, from the mental institutions themselves, not from the ER that you might go into first,
Mhm.
is that of like kind of an adult daycare center. So like a lot of the activities that they have you do are not activities that would be challenging or intriguing to adults. They will give you a picture to color, or
Yeah.
something to paint, or something like that. And I understand perhaps the whole point is to not be challenging it for for it to be relaxing or something. But the last time like I was in the mental health institution, they had us watch Space Jam, which is a kids movie. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, except that the space itself seems infantilizing by its very design. Um, and for me, a lot of that is for the visiting families. Because if you are, if you're inside of a mental institution and the staff is already not listening to you, and you're surrounded by people asking you to paint a pretty picture, that just kind of doubly reinforces this feeling that you are not being, taken seriously as an adult patient.
Right.
And in my personal experience, a lot of the nurses will act as if you were already under a conservatorship. So the last time I was in, because I asked my mother to drop me off, right? The
Mm-hmm.
only thing she did was drop me off. And yet, specifically and only because the staff saw my mother drop me off, every single time they referred to me entering into the ER, they referred to my mother. And I
Oh
had
my
to reinforce,
gosh.
I am a 28-year-old woman. I'm not under a conservatorship. You will treat me as an adult. Stop referring to my mother. And of course, that was making me upset, reasonably
Right.
so, because they were passively referring to my mother as some kind of an authority over me. Um, but the other thing about the construction of space, and there's a lot of studies on this, is that the way that you construct a space really kind of impacts how someone is going to behave within that space. So when I was in the ER, they put you in this room, and it's a very small room. There's really nothing in it but a bed. There's like a little TV and some little like whatever medical equipment, I don't know, and a clock. That's pretty much all that's in there. And um, the I don't know, there's no door, but there's the wall that separates you and everyone that's like walking in the corridor or whatever outside is completely made of see-through glass. And it makes you feel like you're this research subject. So no one looks at you, right? When you're looking at them. No one's making
Mhm.
eye contact with you when you walk past. But you can tell that when you're not looking, everyone that walked past, regardless of whether it is their job to observe you, is going to look into your room, which it feels like an immediate invasion of privacy.
Mhm.
um, they're going to look in your room because the glass is there. It incentivizes them to look into your room because there's something inherently to observe in the room. But they
Right.
also know that they're not supposed to interact with you. So whenever you try to look at them or talk to them, you have to go out of your way to do so because the glass is there and everybody knows there's a wall, even though it's very easy to talk through and there's no lock on the wall. So you can open it whenever you want, even though you can't. Like you're not allowed to open this wall door, but you can do it very easily, even on accident. And even if you do it on accident, they will still reprimand you for it.
Yeah.
So, that's just one way to show that the construction of space is really problematic, as far as, reinforcing this feeling that you already feel slightly unstable and now you're some research subject for anybody that walks by. And then the other tidbit for me is insurance companies because, again, this is just a branch of the medical institution in the United States. And a lot of the medical, establishment is founded on profit. So it's financially incentivized for them to find reason to involuntarily hold you, even if you were there voluntarily. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Oh, no, no, no. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. That's why we're here. But yeah, no, I mean, it's 100%. It's 100% for profit. It's based, at least it's based on those ideologies. And,
Right.
I would also argue that it incentivizes the doctors to pump you full of drugs. And
Absolutely.
I remember one of the times that I was in a psychiatric hospital, that's exactly what they did. knowing full well that I am a recovering drug addict. And they still continued to pump me full of drugs. Whether or not they realized it was triggering, I don't know. I do know that I
Right.
told them that what they were doing was not working and it wasn't going to help me. And again, not feeling like I was being listened to.
Yeah.
And so that's why I have this question of, are mental health institutions helpful or are they actually harmful? Because every time I've ever been in one, I haven't really felt like I got better. Or anything like that. I felt like I was in a rat race just to try to get out because
Yeah.
what was happening wasn't actually helping me for the extended stay that I was there. I don't know if you've felt the same way, but what do you think? Do you think they're helpful? Do you think they're hurtful? I don't have an answer, so I'm asking.
Yeah. Honestly, like I just have so many thoughts on this. So, for me, there's so many there's so many things I can say about this. So, okay, so you said about the doctors, right? So
Mhm.
let me just attack this as best I can.
Okay.
So, in my experience, number one, in mental health institutions, you very rarely see doctors, very rarely. So most of the time, you're talking to people who are giving you medication um, that you were, tacitly kind of forced to take. Like you don't really have a choice because they can very easily just go to a judge that you're never going to see, come back an hour later with, like a document saying now you're forced to take this medication and now you have to do it.
Mhm.
So trying to assert your rights as a patient in a mental health facility is just the most difficult thing, number one, because of how easy it is to circumvent your rights. But for me, like you very rarely see doctors. And when you see the doctor, you talk to them for maybe 5-10 minutes and that's it
Oh, at most. At
at
most.
most.
Yeah.
And so there's that. And as far as, like pumping you full of drugs, so I don't think, obviously a lot of people who have never been in the mental health care, you know, not facility, institution at large anyway, so not even therapy or anything, they would assume, I imagine, that you immediately just get sent to the mental health care institution, which is not true. You can wait. So I've waited a day before they found a bed for me, and then they just shipped me off.
Yep.
Um, but so when I finally was taken to the mental health care facility this last time, the first thing they did was make me undress, and they watched. So I'm sorry if that's triggering, but it is a fact. I asked them why. They didn't give me an answer. That's just how they do things, right? So whatever. And I had told them, before, which again they didn't document, that I am a CSA survivor. So there's that as well. They just whatever. So, but the next thing they did after I got redressed in whatever uniform I had to get dressed in, is they injected me with whatever it was they injected me with. I imagine it was some kind of like sedative or something like that.
Was it in a
But
syringe? Because it was probably
yeah,
like Haldol or something. Yeah.
yeah, something that's what I was thinking. Some kind of anti-anxiety medication or something.
Yeah.
But it was two of them, and again, they didn't tell me what it was. And this happened within 5 minutes of me getting there.
Oh
So
my
there
God.
was no observation by the staff or anything that precipitated this. And my response when I'm treated like that in mental institutions is like, okay, you're treating me like I'm crazy and I'm not even acting crazy, so now I'm going to act crazy. And what are you going to do? You already injected me with the stuff. And they don't do anything after that.
Right.
um so anyway, I just wanted to say that because of the whole like doctors not paying attention, doctors just, routinely pumping you full of stuff. It's one of the reasons why I tell every psychiatrist now, like, I will refuse to take Zyprexa. Nothing that you say or do will make me take this medication because it fucked my life up. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can cuss.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
okay. But okay, to the question though, are they helping? So in my master's program, my main focus was looking at the intersection between mass incarceration and mental health. Because I don't know how many people are still aware of this history, but back in the day, 1920s and moving on, both of them were kind of rooted in the same philosophy. They basically treated them the same way. The only difference was prison labor was more useful, and they were more easy to enforce or whatever than mental health patients who were really relegated to basically being lab rats. But it was all really rooted in eugenics. And so when I look at the state of mental health care today, especially in actual mental health institutions, as a patient, but also, as someone who's studied this, what I see is a lot of containment policies and a lot of we have to keep the public at large safe from these people who we don't know how to control. That's what it feels like. And it feels very much like this like input output thing where people who have never been in these institutions drop you into an institution and expect you to come out squeaky clean later like it's some kind of dishwasher. And then, oftentimes you get put in the very same environment that triggered you before, except now you're armed with drugs that,
Yeah.
some professional, co-sign for you to become addicted to. Because a lot of these antipsychotics and stuff are very heavily addictive, and they don't tell you that.
No, they
Um,
don't. They fail to mention any of those things.
absolutely. Or any of, like the really pronounced side effects. They really don't tell you anything because they don't have to. And it's
Yeah.
not that they don't actually have to legally. It's just that, when you come back out to the general public, no one asks you how you were treated. No one asks you, was it okay? Did they ask you proper questions? Did they treat you right? No one asks you those questions. They just want
No,
to
they
know that
they
you're
just,
going
are
to
you
therapy.
okay? Yeah.
Right. So for me, there is so much good that the mental health care industry can do. I have an absolutely wonderful therapist.
Mhm.
But part of the reason why I work so well with my therapist is because her and my politics are very similar. She's very like understanding of decolonization politics. We're both queer. There's a lot of things that I can talk to my therapist about that I can't talk to just anyone about. And it's purely because of our understanding and our, kind of similar experiences and socialization that I'm able to talk to her about these things. Um, I personally think that the mental health care industry is really not doing what it's supposed to do at best. It's constructed in order to contain mental health and to pathologize anything that could potentially look like mental illness,
Yeah.
um, as like some kind of preemptive policy. But it's not really doing the job of caring for and healing people who, by and large, are just exhibiting signs of trauma and confusion in a world that's not really allowing them to understand that trauma.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that they have the potential to do good,
Hmm.
but I am of the opinion that, like, this might be controversial and you can cancel me for it. It's completely fine. Just gut the whole thing. Scrap the segment. Like, start
Hmm.
over. It's a page one rewrite. We need to just scrap the whole thing and, figure out a whole new way of approaching this, because I personally don't think that the way that we've been dealing with it doesn't really feel like it's been working and doing much good for anybody other than certain people's bank accounts. And
Right.
that's not helping the people who you're supposed to be helping. Um,
Hmm.
you know, and so I think that they have the potential to be helpful. I don't know if they are actually as helpful. I mean, mental health institutions have felt like they are just so far behind, especially on like treatment. I mean, yes,
Mm.
you don't have mental health patients, sitting in their own like shit anymore and just rubbing it on the walls, the vast majority of people. But so in that aspect, it's gotten better, but the bar is so low, you guys. Like,
Right. Right. And for me, so when I was in my PhD program, oops, one of the I guess activist fellow students that I knew was talking about the concept of like a mad identity, where you see mental illness not just as something to cure, but the experience and having lived through it as being a kind of socializing towards a particular identity where madness is like, how do you say it? Like just a
Like
set of lived experience that can be understood between other people who have gone through the same thing. And it's
it's a
sort of like a
translation.
reclamation. Yeah, yeah. And it's, you know, sort of a reclamation of, you know, this idea of being crazy or being insane or being unstable, like all of these things, and rewriting the narrative from the perspective not of people who are afraid of it, who've never experienced it, but from people who've actually gone through it and, you know, have, you know, been fortunate enough to live to tell the tale. Um, and seeing that from that perspective and thinking about like, well, what would it look like if people who have been in mental health institutions were to collectively, you know, decide for themselves what a healthy mental health care system looks like and how they want to be treated, how they want to be discussed in society, and what policies would actually benefit them as people who have, you know, at least been told by the current establishment that those, you know, these diagnoses, these identities are never going to go away.
Hmm.
You know, how do we see things, because a lot of this is being administered by people who have never gone through it.
Right, which is, highly frustrating. Unfortunately, and you might know the numbers better than I would, but you guys, like depression, I know the statistics for like people with depression is like through the roof. And anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
it's like through the roof. So there's a lot of us. There are a lot of us out there just in the
Mm-hmm.
United States alone who, are suffering and, trying to live day to day with these things. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what would happen if we all banded together and was like, hey, red flag city for all these institutions, you're not, I don't know if you've noticed, but you're not actually helping anybody.
Right.
And we would like to have a say. I would say that's really the gist of it is I would like to have a say in what happens here and how you're doing this. And I would also like to be treated as an adult and not like you were saying, because the institutions are pretty similar here, as far as like the structure goes you were talking about and the setting of it. It's very
Mm-hmm.
childlike, and that doesn't always feel good either. You know.
Right.
Um.
Right. And oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Well, and again, I was just gonna say, just as far as that like childlike thing, I really feel like a lot of the way that mental health care institutions are constructed, at least nowadays, is purely for the benefit of anybody who may be um, you know, coming in to visit the patient. Because, you know, what you want to see is your family member or your spouse or whoever um, in a space that looks peaceful to you, that looks, you know, calm and relaxing and, you know, maybe, you know, quietly colorful, you know, just something like that. You want to be at peace knowing that you put your loved one in a space that is safe and comfortable for them. Um, but the problem with that, and you know, again, this is more just based on what I've learned in my repeated times being institutionalized, is a lot of the time, you know, they're putting abusers and people who have been abused in the same room together.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're putting people who refuse to keep their hands to themselves and people who are triggered by being touched in the same room together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're making it so, you know, like that old bully thing in school where like if you fight your bully, then you're as bad as your bully kind of thing and you both get punished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so what that ends up meaning is that the people who just won't keep their hands to themselves will, like I've had people try to sneak into my room at night, you know,
Oh, yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's just a thing that happens because the
Mm-hmm.
doors have to stay open. So any patient who just like decides, "Ooh, now's my opportunity," can just sneak into someone's room.
Yeah.
And fortunately or unfortunately, since they go through every like 15 minutes and flash a bright light in your face at night to check and make sure you're asleep or something, I can't sleep in mental health institutions.
No.
Um,
And I
so
don't know if you're aware of this, but sleep is
hmm,
important.
sleep is very
I was,
important. I love sleep.
at least I was under the impression that sleep is important. Um,
Right. But
and yeah,
yeah,
every
I don't know. So sorry.
no, no, you're totally fine. You're totally fine. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you.
Well, it's just, for me, a lot of the setup is, for the comfort of visiting folks, right? The decor and everything. And most of it, again, is for the setup, for the ease of administering for the nurses that are watching over you. And it doesn't really escape my notice that the people who are the most like the best nurses were clearly high as hell. Like they were clearly like getting high on their breaks and coming back in and just vibing with us.
Mm-hmm.
And just there's just so much that happens, and I could go on and on about the abuses that have happened to me personally and that I've heard, the reviews of institutions that I've been in after the fact. There is so much terrible shit that can happen in mental institutions purely because nobody listens. And when
Yeah.
there's a group of people that nobody listens to, people who are abusive will opt into those spaces because they like to power trip.
Yeah. And because it goes into that idea of like, well, they're crazy. So who are you going to believe? It
Right.
kind
Who's
of
going to believe you anyway?
defaults. Yeah. It kind of defaults automatically into that space. Um, which, like you said, is just a ripe opportunity for abusers and predators to come
Hmm.
in and just sort of have free reign. Um,
Right.
and I think that goes to, that's a tough topic to talk about because I do think that there is a distance that like
Hmm.
uh, those that haven't been in institutions keep from those that have, and it's a stigma, and it's not. I think it's deeper than a stigma. I don't think that's like the proper word. That seems too soft of a word.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. What do you think? Is there? I think there's a distance.
Yeah. Or just to clarify, when you say distance, do you mean like a disconnect between people who haven't been in and people who have?
A disconnect, but also a you get away from me.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, I fully agree with that. For me as someone, I don't really like the word, but high functioning is
Mm,
what I get a lot. I've written a lot of stuff, I've made a lot of art, I have a lot of accolades and stuff behind me. So when I'm dealing with mental health care professionals outside of an institutional context, they really gaslight me about my own experiences with mental illness. They look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're fine. I know that you feel like this may be a problem, but nah, you're fine. Because only people who've never done the stuff that you have done could feel that way legitimately, you know?
yeah.
So what I get a lot from like psychiatrists especially, and I'm gonna be honest, I've never had a good psychiatrist.
Mm.
Like even when I thought I had a good psychiatrist, I didn't. I've had psychiatrists lie on my paperwork and diagnose me with a disorder that the next psychiatrist was like one look at me and was like, nah,
Hmm.
that doesn't even make any sense for you. And then had to take it off the paperwork. But that the previous psychiatrist used that in order to remove me as their patient so they didn't have to contend with the fact that they weren't being a good psychiatrist to me.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, so to this distance, I do believe that's the case. A lot of our, Halloween comes around, and one of the primary like things people go for, if it's not like a scary witch or something or a ghost or whatever, is like a mentally ill homicidal maniac. you
Right.
know like it's one of the primary things, like even like Jason or whatever. I don't really do slasher flicks, so I don't know what I'm
Yeah, me
talking
either.
about. But there's this like assumption that it's just this like mindless killing machine that can't be reasoned with and can't stop or whatever. Or like, you know, in a haunted house, like if it's a mental hospital, there's like blood on the walls and people in straitjackets and shit like that, you know?
Yeah.
And there's this clear terror of mental institutions, you know? Even just going to get therapy is terrifying for a lot of people. Being
Hmm.
committed into a mental institution for a lot of people, for them personally, is a terrifying experience because number one, they understand that there's this social, you're right, stigma isn't the right word. Like it's this social death, to be honest. Because
Yes.
what happens if the community finds out? No one's going to treat me like a person anymore. Everyone's going to treat me like, you know, a nutcase or whatever word they
Hmm.
would use.
It's
Um,
almost like you lose credibility as a person if
mhm,
anybody finds out that like this happened to you, kind of a
right,
thing. Which is insane because it's literally just a person who needed to get help and then went and tried to go get help.
right.
So, but anyway, I'm
Absolutely.
sorry.
No, no, you're perfectly fine, and that's like that's exactly, you know, the point that I was making anyway. It's like people are afraid of this like social ostracization, and so I think one of the other things that happens is they'll double down, especially if, you know, one of their loved ones ends up like needing mental health care or something to change in their environment so that they don't need to go in. The next thing that they're going to do is put them into mental health institution, and that goes back for me to this like input output thing. Is
Hmm.
you basically take your non-functioning adult or child, you put them away for 3 days with the people who know how to handle them better, allegedly, and
Mm.
then when they come out, they should be squeaky clean. And if they don't come out within 72 hours, that's fine because the state can extend, or not the state, you know, the doctor can extend your stay for up to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And, you know, the other thing about being in there is it's this limbo. You know, it's like be on good behavior if you want to go home, if you want the right to go home and be out of this place where you're probably being abused or at least discounted.
Hmm.
um be on your best behavior. I know we're not, but that's just part of the test. We don't have to be on good behavior because we're not the patients. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, so for me, like just one possible thing that could help is like, I feel like mental health places should be like some kind of small resort kind of thing. Like it should be like you're getting a vacation away from life right now. But I think part of the reason it's not like that is because people on the outside will be like, well, what did they do to earn that? Well, I would go crazy too if I could, you know, go to this nice place where people treat me well and give me like luxurious, you know, whatever. You know, there's this like almost as a desire to contain and to punish,
Hmm.
you know, I don't know if you've noticed, because like at least where I am at, they don't call it mental health care. Like the official name, it's called behavioral health,
Yes.
not mental health. And that name is very important to me because behavioral health implies that discipline is required.
Yeah.
These people are not
I was just going to
actually
say that.
ill. It's just in their head, which means they're acting out, and we have to show them how to be disciplined.
Right. And what is the most, or what is the easiest form of discipline to show to a child? To beat them or to cause more trauma to them
Hmm.
because it's the easiest thing to do. It's you know, it's not the road less traveled, but you know, it's the easiest
It's
road.
the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need to, obviously talking about it is a good way to, is a good start.
Hmm.
Um, but I do think that there needs to be m- not just a conversation, but you know, we need to, as people, come together and go, "Hey, no, we're not going to take this anymore because you're not." I mean, I wouldn't even treat an animal in some places that I've been the way that I've been treated.
Right.
It's like it can get that bad, and it's like you said, uh, you really don't get control, and you basically have to do whatever it is, if they say stand on your head in the corner, hold your breath, and do 100 push-ups, then you kind of have to do that in order for you to have this semblance of hope that you can get out one day.
Absolutely.
And it can feel that ridiculous at times, you guys. It really can.
Well, I mean, just even there's more simple ways that they dehumanize you too, because like again with this infantilization thing, right? So one of the things, at least in the state of California, that you have the right to is writing materials to write, whatever. And the second maybe time that I was there, one of the things that I would do is every time a nurse like, violated someone's right that I saw, I would go and I would read the right that they violated out loud. And I'm a very loud person.
Yes.
And like, what are they going to do? Like call you crazy? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I would just stand there and read the patient rights, out loud to everybody. Cause again, not everybody can read very well, So, posting the written patient rights and not actually reading them to the patients as they come in is actually kind of a problem as well. So they like carted me off as soon as they could. They got me out of there as soon as possible because I was intentionally making it very hard for them to be abusive to people because I was calling the patient advocate every single time they did anything wrong.
Yeah.
But the next time that I came in to that same hospital, um, you know, instead of being able to write on this legal document, this legal complaint form, right, to the patient advocate, now you have to use these broken crayons. Even under supervision, they would have you use these broken crayons to try and write.
I remember one time they had me sign a document like in purple crayon. I kid you not. Like it was to that point where it was like, really? I can't even have like a pen?
I know like by the last time I was in, I was so mad that like I was just like, I don't care. You guys aren't listening anyways. You don't care about me. So I'm just going to sign all of these documents preemptively. I'm not even going to look at them. There was nothing on the paperwork. There's nothing. They just handed me empty documents. And I just signed them because I was pissed off. And at this point, I was having an episode. And they just smiled and let me do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, if I was any other patient or if I was having any other kind of episode where what if I had already thought there was stuff on the paperwork, being in a mental health institution, it could have been anything. And these people smiled at me, like thought this was funny and just let me sign these legal documents before they wrote anything on them.
Yeah. It's a nightmare.
That, right, is a fucking problem. So, I don't know. For me, it's just twofold. It's like the public at large just sees the mental health care system as these fail-safe trash bins or recycle bins or something for people they don't want to have to deal with. And then there's this inherent fear that's unconscious because they're like, I'm not that person. So they don't think about it until they start experiencing symptoms of depression or they start experiencing their first bout of mania. And now, am I crazy? No, I'm not crazy. Am I crazy? You know what I mean? But yeah.
It breeds an environment of fear, of fear to get help, and fear of and to a certain extent massive denial of we are hindering, we are not helping the process by continuing to perpetuate this cycle of, if you are in a mental health facility of any kind, you get away from me, or why would you do that, or this sort of, we'll just shove you in the corner and cross our fingers and hope that you get better while you're gone, kind of a thing. And that is, I think, a big thing that needs to change. Is we need to stop shaming people for trying to get the help that they need. But we also need to help the people who are trying to get the help that they need. And that means listening to them.
Right. Actively listening, not just looking for keywords or waiting to respond or just humoring them and letting them get it out. but actively listening as though this person, I know this might be controversial, is a human being that needs to be listened
Whoa.
to. Amazing, I know.
Mind blowing.
And so you had said something about like, okay, like what can we do besides just converse about this, like
Mm.
what can we do outside of just talking about this amongst ourselves? Because I feel like as far as people with like mental illness are concerned that have had to deal with psychiatrists and therapists and stuff routinely, I feel like we're all kind of on the same page. And
Yeah.
like for me, like there were moments where I needed to be in a mental health institution that prioritized my care. But the fact of the matter is I've never been in a mental health institution that prioritized my care. And part of me waking up was recognizing that I needed to do organizing work in that space, and that focus gave me the opportunity to recenter myself. But it was in spite of where I was, not because of it. So for me, I one of the things that I think would be good is just doing advocacy work. I don't know what the capital of Texas is, which is awful, but
It's Austin.
going to the state capital, for us it would be Sacramento, or to your local council or county, whatever,
Hmm.
and advocating um for those with mental illness as far as whatever policies are being implemented right now. Because from what I've read, a lot of like the CDC or whoever put out these reports say that mental health is the next big epidemic. um and that's a problem, because if we're creating policies based on that which has come before, but on a mass level for people who are just now beginning to experience mental illness, there's a lot that can go wrong with those policies, and it'd be ripe for abuse. So advocacy, just again organizing, creating a GoFundMe to help people who want to do like lobbying or whatever, basically grassroots lobbying, I guess I'd call it, in
Yeah.
order to make our voices heard on a political level, is I think what really needs to happen, because that's where all of these policies are allowed to manifest themselves.
Right. And please guys, if you decide to do that, which you definitely should, make sure you read everything that they are,
Absolutely.
because if it says save the puppies, I can guarantee you it's not about saving the puppies.
Absolutely.
Um, so just make sure you are very thorough and do some research, especially locally, because I don't trust anybody. So don't trust them when they tell you that it's to save the puppies or anything like that. Okay, it's for
Right.
you. It's gonna make you feel better. Don't trust them. Look it up
Right.
yourself.
Always read the details, because there's a lot that they put in there.
Oh yeah. So one last question. I'm so sorry, and
Hmm.
then I won't keep you any longer. But what inspires you to do what you are doing, and what do you hope to inspire in others?
Mm. Um, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I'm sorry. I'm gonna say my past self. Like I when I think about who I wanted to be in childhood, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
My mom kept all of my, old assignments and stuff, really. And so I have this huge kind of like mini museum of myself that I can go through and look at and be like, what was it that I really, really valued as a child? And I remember, saying to myself that I wanted to inspire people. Like I want that to be my, career, is inspiring people. But when I was a kid, I would make these book covers like out of, just pieces of printer paper, and I
Mhm.
would just take all day to make one. And I would show my mom and be like, "Look, I made a book." And obviously like I didn't write a book, but like I made a book cover. And just like that, for example, and seeing, I've written 6 books, 4 of which are published right now.
Oh,
And
wow, congratulations.
um, thank you. And it makes me so excited, not just because, that is objectively like a great accomplishment, but because like I know how excited my, little child self would be to know that her self as an adult actually made books the way that she wanted to make them.
Yeah.
Um, And the other thing, I've always been like a feisty little child, like I've always been a fighter. I was a bad little child for a little while. But as I matured, I realized, and I went into martial arts, and they teach you, if they're like about their business, they teach you like once you actually get good at fighting, you are obligated to not just use this on people. That's not what this
Mm.
is for. This is for defending people and making sure everyone is safe. That's what that's for, including yourself. And I really took that to heart. And so, between my desire to inspire people and my love of not just martial arts as an exercise, but the philosophy behind martial arts, and just seeing like, am I the kind of person that would make my child self proud? And am I the kind of person, I want to have kids in the future, hopefully one day, that would make my future children proud. And I think those three things really just are what pushes me forward, and makes me like make sure I'm living according to my principles and trying to do things the right way, even if I don't see other people trying to do the same.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. First of all, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
everything. And second of all, wow, that inspires me. So you're doing good. You're doing great.
Perfect. That's what I want. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah, you're doing fantastic. Oh my gosh, killing it. Um, well, thank you so much for talking to me and us. Oh my gosh, this has been so great. Tell everybody where they can find you again.
Absolutely. So again, I'm on Linktree, and that's just gonna open you up to all of the other stuff that I do. But Linktree slash AkaCLouise. I'm also on Amazon. My 4 poetry books are on Amazon. I also have 2 more books coming out, a 5th poetry book and a book of essays that I wrote in my PhD program. Hopefully that'll be published before December is out. I also have my website, AkaCLouise.wordpress.com. And I do, just because of, what we're talking about in this episode, want to put in a plug for my 4th poetry book called Triggered: A Poetic Flight into Madness, which is my attempt to use poetry to explain the experience of madness and mania in a way that doesn't pathologize it, but sees it kind of as a dark and magical adventure. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, everybody's gonna have to go get that book because that's gonna be so good. I can already tell. Well, thank you so much for checking us out and for coming and talking to us. I had a good time. I hope you did too.
Absolutely.
You guys, you can check me out at MPWeirdo Podcast on the Twitters, the TikTok, and the Instagram are the_main_weirdo1. So check us out. You can leave me a voicemail message at MPWeirdo Podcast, or that's the Twitter, sorry, at manicpixieweirdo.podcast.com. You can leave me an email at manicpixieweirdo@protonmail.com. As always, guys, be kind and stay weird. Thank you.